Welcome once again to the Book Mind channel, where we do a deep dive conversation on famous English books. I'm Sierra, and with me today is our expert guide, ready to break down the skills you need to, well, get what you want.
That's the goal, isn't it? And I'm ready. We're looking at leverage today, clarity, and maybe most importantly, getting over your own mental hurdles.
We sure are. We're diving deep into Tim Castle's guide, The Art of Negotiation, How to Get What You Want Every Time. Published back in 2018, I believe.
That's the one.
Oh.
And it's a really practical take on it.
So our mission for you, the listener, is pretty straightforward. We want to give you a shortcut. Because negotiation skills, they aren't just for boardrooms, right? They're life skills.
Absolutely. Everyday skills.
And by the end of this deep dive, you should have, well, the foundational mindset and the core tactics you need. They're really actionable stuff for any conversation.
Yeah, whether that's a huge business deal or, just figuring out who does the dishes.
Exactly. And I think what makes Castle's approach so compelling is how he starts. He kind of debunks that myth that negotiation is all about aggression or some innate talent.
Right. He frames it as a process. An art, like the title says, that anyone can actually learn, provided, you focus on setting clear goals.
Objectives, yeah.
And thinking about what might get in the way, anticipating obstacles, and crucially, he hits the internal stuff first, the psychology.
And that's such a key distinction. The book's scope, it's designed to be practical, accessible, aimed at anyone really who feels like they kind of stumble in those high-stakes chats.
Yeah, anyone who feels they underperform.
But he doesn't kick off with, here's your opening line or this is how you anchor the price. Nope, he starts with looking inward. Self-diagnosis.
That's exactly right. So pillar one, the first foundational bit, is preparation and clarity. Now, okay, that might sound like negotiation 101, basic stuff.
Sure, seems obvious.
But Castle pushes for a level of detail, a real granularity that honestly most people just skip over. It's not just, oh, I hope I get a raise.
Like a vague wish.
Exactly. It's got to be precise, justified, defensible.
Yeah.
Let's say you want $125,000. Okay, why? You need the market data, your specific achievements documented. You need the whole package ready.
And that kind of preparation, it immediately forces you to think about boundaries, doesn't it? If your target is $125K, you also have to know what's your absolute floor, your walkaway point.
That walkaway point, knowing your minimum acceptable outcome, that's vital. It's where your power comes from.
Wow.
Now, Castle doesn't get bogged down in academic terms, but this intense prep he demands, it forces you to figure out two key things.
Okay, what are those?
First, your BTNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Basically, what will you do if this whole negotiation falls through? Knowing that is your ultimate safety net.
Yeah.
Your leverage.
Right. So, if I'm buying a car and I know there are 3 other dealers with similar cars nearby, that knowledge itself is my BATNA.
Precisely.
And it stops me from feeling like I have to take this specific deal, even if the salesperson is really pushing hard.
Exactly. Gives you the genuine confidence to potentially walk away. And that's huge. The second critical part of prep is figuring out the overlap. Where does your minimum meet their maximum? Or maybe vice versa.
The common ground.
Yeah. What academics call the ZOPA, the zone of possible agreement. Good preparation means digging deep into the other side's needs, their likely objections. You need to anticipate so well that you can make a pretty educated guess about their ZOPA before you even start talking.
So you need to understand their situation too, their budget limits, maybe internal pressures they're facing, why they actually need what you're offering.
All of it. If you don't anticipate their needs, you're flying blind. You're relying purely on reacting in the moment, on improvisation.
Which is stressful and usually less effective. So being well prepared shifts the whole dynamic. You move from feeling, reactive and maybe a bit desperate to having a proactive strategy. And you mentioned this earlier, this confidence that comes from planning. It directly leads to better outcomes, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just not caught off guard as easily.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
An objection isn't a disaster. It's just more information, data to work with, not a wall you've hit.
Okay. But like you said, having all this great preparation is useless if the person is too, scared or intimidated to actually use it.
And that brings us smack into pillar 2, the psychology of negotiation. And for my money, this is where Castle's book really, really shines. It's the crucial differentiator.
The psychological piece, the readiness, and the core requirement here, it isn't about fancy techniques, is it? It's belief.
Yes, belief. You have to genuinely internalize that you have the right to ask for what you want and believe that you actually can handle the conversation successfully.
So why do so many of us, fail that first internal check? Why is it so hard?
It often comes down to limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Things we've absorbed, maybe without even realizing it. Societal messages, perhaps, that asking for things is rude or greedy or just too confrontational, too risky.
I can see that.
Castle points out that a lot of people basically reject themselves before anyone else gets the chance. They decide in their own head, oh, they'll just say no. So they don't even try.
Wow. That's, yeah, intellectual self-sabotage, like you said. And it all stems from not being psychologically ready.
Fundamentally, yes.
It's that inner voice whispering, you don't deserve that salary, or there's no way they'll budge on that price. So how does the book suggest we, fight back against that? How do we dismantle it?
He really emphasizes two things mainly: persistence and resilience.
Yeah.
Negotiation, especially for anything complex, it's rarely just one meeting, one quick yes.
Right. It can be a process.
Definitely. So resilience is about being able to take that initial no, which, by the way, Castle suggests reframing. Don't see it as flat-out rejection. See it as maybe a request for more information or a signal to try a different approach.
Okay. So no isn't the end of the conversation necessarily.
Not at all. He encourages building up that psychological muscle, that fortitude, maybe through smaller wins, practicing in low-stakes situations. And crucially, learning to separate your own self-worth from whether or not you get this specific deal.
That's hard, though.
It is, but it's key. The goal is to approach it almost like a scientist. If your hypothesis doesn't work out, you don't collapse, you just adjust your variables and run the experiment again.
That detachment, separating the proposal from the person, that sounds vital. And it leads right into the next bit, Pillar 3. Overcoming specific psychological barriers. The book really digs into why we resist internally, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And the big one, the most common hurdle, is simply the fear of rejection. Like we touched on, people mix up the rejection of their offer with being rejected as a person.
How do you get past that?
Castle suggests things like visualization techniques, mentally rehearsing the conversation going well, and also, like I mentioned, practicing in low-stakes scenarios. Ask for a small discount on your coffee or try to return something slightly outside the return window. Just little things.
To kind of desensitize yourself to hearing no.
Exactly. Every small success, even tiny ones, builds up this internal library of evidence. Proof that you can ask, and sometimes you actually receive.
I found the part in the source material about the imbalance of perceived need really interesting, too. That it's less about who actually needs the deal more and more about who looks like they need it more.
Oh, managing that perception, that's tactical brilliance right there.
Yeah.
If you walk in practically vibrating with desperation,
yeah.
You've just handed over all your power, all your leverage, gone. Castle explains that a skilled negotiator needs to project this quiet, reasonable confidence, a vibe that says, look, I have other options, even if those options aren't amazing.
So it's about controlling your signals.
Absolutely. Your nonverbals.
Right.
Don't be overly eager or rush your words. Keep your posture relaxed but engaged. Use language that's strong but, neutral. Not aggressive, not weak.
So if the other side gets the sense that you're perfectly okay walking away, they're suddenly more motivated to find a way to keep you there, to bridge that gap.
You got it. That psychological readiness, it's not just about feeling good inside. It's a core part of your leverage. If you haven't mastered that fear, you'll rush things. You'll give concessions too soon.
And you won't effectively use all that great data you gathered back in Pillar 1, the preparation phase.
That's the whole point. It's a loop. Preparation fuels psychological readiness, and readiness allows you to deploy your preparation effectively. They're completely linked. One informs the other.
Creating this, I guess, grounded, confident negotiator who's now ready to actually interact.
Precisely. Ready to move into the active phase.
Okay, so we've got the internal game plan sorted, the map is drawn, the engine is running, now we're driving, we're moving into the interaction itself, the external stuff.
Right, the execution.
This brings us to Pillar 4, mastering communication skills. How do we actually deploy all this prep and mindset work?
Communication is the vehicle, really. And Castle highlights something interesting. The best negotiators. They actually spend way more time listening than they do talking.
Really? That seems counterintuitive sometimes.
It can feel that way. But it starts with active listening and asking the right questions. And active listening isn't just, waiting politely for your turn to speak while planning your killer rebuttal.
No, it's actually absorbing what they're saying.
Fully engaging, trying to understand the why behind their words. If you listen truly actively, the other person often reveals their underlying interest, not just their surface position.
Can you give an example of that? Interest versus position.
Sure. So their position might be, we need a lower price. That's what they state up front. But if you listen carefully, ask good questions. Their interest might actually be, say, hitting a specific budget target for the quarter. Or maybe securing a reliable supplier for the long term is more important than the absolute lowest price right now.
Ah, okay. So the stated demand isn't always the real need.
Exactly. And that's where the right questions come in. Instead of asking a closed question like, will you accept $10,000? Which just invites a yes or no, very positional. Castle guides you toward open-ended questions. Things like, help me understand the specific budget challenge that makes $10,000 difficult right now, or beyond the price itself, what would make this deal feel like a real win for your team?
Those questions force them to elaborate, don't they? To reveal more about their situation and what they actually value?
Precisely. They push past the superficial demands to uncover the genuine interests and constraints on their side, which gives you much more to work with.
And the book also emphasizes reading beyond the words, right? The whole understanding nonverbal cues thing, body language, that can't be ignored.
Oh, absolutely critical. What specific signals does Castle point out? He talks a lot about looking for congruence. Does their relaxed body language actually match their confident words? Or is there a disconnect?
Like saying yes while shaking their head slightly.
Exactly. Or look for physical signs of stress when you bring up a certain topic. Maybe they suddenly shift in their seat or start rubbing their neck or fiddling with a pen. Little, maybe unconscious self-soothing actions.
So if you mention, say, a tight deadline and they suddenly lean back, cross their arms, maybe avoid eye contact.
That's a pretty clear signal, isn't it? That timeline is probably a sore spot, something they're not comfortable with or maybe not ready to discuss openly yet. Spotting those cues lets you adjust. Maybe you pivot your questioning. Maybe you soften your tone on that point to reduce their defensiveness.
Okay, here's something that really stood out for me in the source material, a specific tactic. The tactical use of silence. Now, this is fascinating because most people, especially if they're new to negotiation, they hate silence.
Oh, they're terrified of it, yeah.
It feels awkward, like dead air that needs to be filled immediately.
But silence, used deliberately, it's actually a very powerful tool. Or maybe weapon is too strong a word, but it's highly effective. Castle really stresses this. After you've made a significant point, or you've put an offer on the table, or asked a particularly challenging question, just stop talking. Just wait. Hold that silence. It creates a certain pressure. It compels the other person to respond, to process what you said. They might reveal more of what they're thinking, or sometimes they might even offer a concession just to break that tension.
Whereas if you jump in quickly to fill the silence,
You often end up negotiating against yourselves.
Yeah.
You might offer a compromise you didn't even need to make just because you panicked in the quiet.
wow. So using silence strategically, listening actively, it feels like it shifts the whole vibe, doesn't it? Away from this idea of it being a battle, an adversarial fight,
Yes.
and more towards, I don't know, structured problem solving together, which leads us nicely into the next big idea, Pillar 5, relationship building and long-term trust.
This really gets to the heart of Castle's philosophy, I think. He strongly challenges that old zero-sum view of negotiation. The idea that for me to win, you absolutely have to lose.
That classic hardball win at all costs approach.
Yeah, and he argues that's just outdated and often really damaging, especially in modern business or even personal relationships.
Okay, but let me push back on that slightly. The win-win imperative, it sounds great, very positive, but what if you are dealing with someone who is genuinely just trying to take advantage? Someone who sees your attempt at collaboration as weakness? Isn't there a risk you just end up getting rolled over if you're too focused on win-win?
That's a totally fair point, and it's a necessary one. Castle isn't suggesting you be naive or a pushover. He addresses this by sort of redefining what winning means in a win-win. It doesn't automatically mean you just split everything down the middle 50-50.
Okay, so what does it mean then?
It means you're working together to find value that maybe wasn't obvious at first. Expanding the pie, as they say. For example, maybe you're negotiating a contract for software. The price itself might be a sticking point.
Right.
But perhaps you can offer them, say, 2 extra months of premium technical support. That might be relatively low cost for you to provide, but incredibly valuable for them, giving them peace of mind. So you got the price you needed. They got extra security and value. That's a win-win.
Ah, I see. So it's about creativity, finding different ways to meet both sides' underlying needs, not just haggling over one single variable like price.
Exactly. It's about expanding the possibilities, not just fighting over the existing ones. And the focus shifts towards mutual benefit and, crucially, the long-term impact. Castle hammers this home. If you negotiate a deal today and the other side walks away feeling totally ripped off, completely taken advantage of.
They're not going to be happy.
They're going to be looking for ways to get back at you later. Or they'll badmouth you to others. Or they'll simply refuse to ever work with you again. That destroyed trust. That's a huge long-term loss, potentially far outweighing whatever extra pennies you squeezed out of that one deal.
So preserving the relationship, building that reputation for being tough but fair, that actually has significant long-term value itself.
Often far more value than just maximizing your gain in this single isolated transaction.
Okay, so the ideal outcome isn't just getting what you want. It's getting what you want while making sure the other person feels respected and satisfied enough with the outcome.
Yeah, satisfied enough that they're genuinely happy to shake your hand at the end, and maybe even enthusiastic about dealing with you again in the future.
It's taking negotiation from just a transaction
To something relational, building connections.
transactional to relational. I like that.
And that approach, that relational mindset, built on that foundation of clarity and psychological calm we talked about, that's really the signature of a sophisticated, effective, modern negotiator.
All right, so we've covered the internal prep, the mindset, the communication philosophy. We've built the confidence, got the toolkit ready, established that collaborative spirit. Now, let's get down to brass tacks.
Let's do it.
Pillar 6 is all about tactics and real-world examples. This is where the theory hits the road, right? Bridging that gap between understanding the concepts and actually knowing what to do in the moment.
Yes, and this section is incredibly valuable for the learner. Castle uses really concrete case studies here, not just abstract ideas, but actual scenarios to show how the advice works. Especially around handling objections, that moment everyone kind of dreads.
Ah, yes, the no.
He gives you actual frameworks, specific ways to try and turn that firm no into maybe a yes F, or at least a maybe, tell me more.
Okay, can you give us an example? Walk us through one of his techniques for reframing an objection. Let's say someone just hits you with a flat, no, that price is too high. What do you do then?
Okay, good one. So the novice negotiator, they hear too high, they panic, and they immediately start dropping the price. Right?
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
Castle advises strongly against that knee-jerk reaction. Instead, you need to isolate that objection. Is it really just the price, or is something else going on?
Okay.
And then link it back to the value you offer. One simple tactic he suggests is the if-then reframing.
Okay, how does that work?
You might respond with something like, okay, I hear you, price is a key consideration. If we were able to include, say, those 3 extra features we discussed earlier, the ones you said were really important, then would this price point start to make more sense in terms of overall value?
Ah, clever. So you're not just giving a discount, you're holding your ground on price, but offering to add more value to justify it. You're changing the equation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're offering an exchange. You maintain your position, but address their stated constraint by adding something else they value. Or, another example, if they object to your proposed timeline, instead of just agreeing to delay, you might ask, okay, let's explore that. If the delivery date was shifted 2 weeks later, what specific internal processes on your end would that potentially help smooth out or improve?
So you're digging deeper again, trying to understand the why behind the objection, not just accepting it at face value and keeping the conversation constructive.
Precisely. You break the objection down, make it less of a monolithic no, and keep things moving forward by always tying it back to their underlying interests or needs.
You know, one thing the source materials really highlighted, which I appreciate, is the relatability factor. This isn't just abstract theory for CEOs negotiating billion-dollar mergers.
Not at all.
The examples he uses are often really everyday situations, aren't they? Things everyone goes through. Negotiating a job offer, maybe trying to get a better deal on a lease renewal, or even just challenging an incorrect utility bill.
He completely democratizes this skill set. That's a huge strength. Because the core principles, understanding perceived need, having clarity on your goals, managing your fear, they're exactly the same whether you're aiming for a 6-figure salary or just trying to get 50 quid off a secondhand fridge.
Right.
And by using these relatable everyday examples, Castle makes the whole idea of learning negotiation feel much less daunting, especially for someone just starting out. He even provides sort of conversational templates or scripts.
Yeah, really, like word for word.
Not necessarily to be read out loud verbatim, no, but more structural guides. Examples of how you might phrase those open-ended questions we talked about, or how to handle that initial pushback gracefully without getting flustered. Really practical stuff.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and assess the book itself. In a crowded field, there are tons of negotiation books out there. Why does this one, The Art of Negotiation, seem to resonate? What are its main strengths?
Well, First and foremost, I'd say it's accessibility. You hear this again and again from readers. The writing style is deliberately straightforward, easy to follow. It's not dense or overly academic.
So it's good for people who might be intimidated by more theoretical business books.
Absolutely. If you don't have formal negotiation training, Castle gives you a really clear, structured way in. That's a major plus.
What else?
Second, definitely the practicality. As we've been discussing, the sources all emphasize how concrete the tools are. He doesn't just tell you, be more confident. He explains how to do the preparation that naturally leads to confidence. He gives you actual conversational tactics, specific things you can try in your very next negotiation. It makes the book feel like a genuine toolkit, a reference guide you can keep coming back to.
Like something you'd review before an important meeting.
Exactly. But I think the biggest strength, the thing that really makes it stand out for me, is that relentless mindset focus. You know, we see so many negotiation books that are brilliant on strategy, on the mechanics, how to make the first offer, concession strategies, things like that.
But what and how?
Right. But they often kind of gloss over the internal game, the psychology. Castle puts that front and center. Understanding perception, building that self-belief, learning how to manage the emotional side, the risk, that's the bedrock.
Because knowing the right moves is one thing.
But having the actual confidence and composure to make those moves under pressure, that's something else entirely. And Castle helps build that internal foundation.
Okay, it sounds like a really solid resource, especially for certain people. But no book is perfect. We have to address the weaknesses and critiques as well. Where does The Art of Negotiation perhaps fall a bit short?
Well, one critique that comes up fairly often is repetition. Because those foundational concepts, preparation, clarity, belief, resilience, are so central to his method, Castle does tend to reiterate them quite a bit throughout the book.
Which could be good or bad, I suppose.
Exactly. For someone new, that repetition can be really helpful. It drills the core messages home. But if you're a faster reader, or maybe already familiar with some basic concepts, you might find some sections feel a little less concise than they perhaps could be.
Okay, fair enough. Comprehensive, but maybe could be tighter in places. What about for someone who isn't a beginner? Someone who's already done a fair bit of negotiating?
That points to the main limitation, really. The book is an excellent, let's say, Negotiation 101 and maybe 201 course. It builds a fantastic foundation. But if you're already steeped in negotiation theory, maybe you've deeply studied Fisher and Dury's interest-based bargaining from getting to yes, or, Chris Voss's work on tactical empathy and never split the difference.
The really advanced stuff.
Right. For that person, Castle's work might feel more foundational than groundbreaking. It sets the stage beautifully, provides essential skills, but it doesn't really introduce, say, complex frameworks for multi-party negotiations or deep dives into cross-cultural negotiation nuances or highly technical legal strategies.
So it builds you a really solid house, maybe adds a nice deck.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily detail the advanced smart home wiring or the geothermal heating system.
That's a great analogy. It gives you the essential structure and the core functionalities you need for, honestly, probably 90% of the negotiations you'll face in life. But for that top 10%, the really high-pressure, complex, maybe adversarial situations, you might need to supplement it with more specialized resources.
Got it. And we should probably briefly mention, just for completeness, that some sources noted minor issues with print quality in some early editions of the book.
Yes, that was mentioned. Obviously completely irrelevant to the actual content and the knowledge inside, but it was a point raised in some reviews, so worth acknowledging.
Okay, let's pull all this together for the listener. Let's create that profile. Who is the ideal person to really benefit from this deep dive into Tim Castle's approach? Who needs this book?
Well, I think this book is almost perfectly designed for anyone who feels that little knot of anxiety when they think about negotiating. If the whole idea makes you uncomfortable, this is your starting point.
So people new to serious negotiation.
Definitely. Think about someone facing their first proper salary review, or trying to land their first big client contract as a freelancer, or maybe buying their first car or home. Those major life purchases where the stakes feel high.
And especially if they struggle with that internal voice, the one saying, don't ask for too much, or they'll think I'm being difficult.
Absolutely. If that's you, Castle provides the tools and, crucially, the psychological reframing to overcome that hesitation. It gives you permission, almost, to ask for what you want and a structured way to go about it.
It also sounds incredibly useful for people whose work relies heavily on relationships. Small business owners, maybe? Managers who need to negotiate with their teams while keeping morale high?
Oh, for sure. That collaborative win-win focus we talked about, that's vital. For anyone needing long-term success, where your reputation really matters. Freelancers, building a client base, consultants, team leaders. Anyone who can't afford to burn bridges.
It gives you that structured way to be assertive without being aggressive.
Mhm.
To enter the conversation feeling prepared and calm, not panicked.
That's it exactly. Now, just to give a bit more comparative context,
Yeah.
where does Castle fit alongside those other giants of negotiation literature we mentioned? Like getting to yes or never split the difference.
Yeah, how does it stack up or complement them? Because those are often seen as the absolute must-reads in the field.
I'd say Castle provides the essential launching pad. He gives you that crucial confidence boost and drills in the absolute necessity of psychological readiness and meticulous preparation, things the other books sometimes touch on, but maybe assume you've already grasped to some extent.
So read Castle first to build the foundation, get your head right, get your prep habits solid.
That would be my recommendation, yes. Yeah. Build that internal resilience. Get comfortable with the core process he lays out. Then, if your work takes you into more complex territory,
Like needing really deep strategic thinking for, say, major contract disputes or complex multi-stakeholder deals.
then you might move on to Fisher and Urey, getting to.
Yes.
For those detailed interest-based frameworks, how to systematically uncover underlying interests and invent options for mutual gain.
Okay. And what about Voss? Never split the difference. When would you turn to that?
Voss comes in when you're dealing with highly charged emotional situations, high-stakes pressure, maybe even deception or irrationality, think crisis negotiation, hostage situations, which is his background, of course, but also really tough business standoffs. His techniques, tactical empathy, mirroring, labeling, are designed for navigating that kind of intense psychological terrain.
So Castle gives you the everyday toolkit, how to be effective, fair, and collaborative in most situations.
Yes. He teaches negotiation as a fundamental, healthy life skill. He sets that baseline.
And then Fisher and Urey provide the advanced strategic blueprints, and Voss gives you the specialized gear for psychological combat, if needed.
That's a pretty good summary. Castle demystifies negotiation. He removes the fear factor for beginners and provides practical tools you can use immediately. He builds the essential floor.
So my final takeaway for you, the listener, listening to all this, is that The Art of Negotiation by Tim Castle is just an incredibly valuable starting point and ongoing reference.
Agreed.
Its real strength seems to be how it balances those two critical sides. The psychological awareness, understanding your own fears, managing perception, and the practical, straightforward tactics you can implement right away.
That blend is key.
It doesn't just tell you what to do, it helps you understand why you might be hesitant in the first place and gives you concrete steps to overcome that internal resistance.
And that combination, that psychological diagnosis coupled with really practical application, that's what makes it such a useful and, I think, enduring resource. As Castle implies, success often really does boil down to confidence meeting careful preparation.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been a fantastic, really insightful deep dive into getting clarity and leverage in our conversations. Hashtag tag outro.
You know, my final thought for you, the listener, something to maybe mull over. It connects directly back to Castle's big themes of persistence and resilience.
Okay.
Think about it. If you can learn to handle a strategic no in a negotiation, if you can truly reframe that rejection, not as personal failure, but just as, feedback or a request for a different approach,
Right.
then you've basically developed a core life skill for handling setbacks in any part of your life, haven't you? That ability to absorb resistance, adjust, and keep moving forward. Don't just keep that skill locked up for the negotiation table.
Apply it more broadly.
Exactly. Apply that resilience, that readiness to persist to your bigger goals, your ambitions outside just haggling over terms. It's a powerful mindset.
That's a really powerful thought to end on. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. If you found this deep dive helpful, please do take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us keep bringing you these conversations.
Yes, please do. And we always enjoy reading your comments and hearing about your own experiences with these kinds of essential skills and guides.
Definitely. So, on that note, we've got a question for you based on our discussion today. Thinking about Tim Castle's approach, which element do you personally believe is more critical for achieving success in a negotiation? Is it the meticulous preparation, really nailing down your goals and your walkaway points? Or is it mastering the psychological side, managing that fear of rejection and building inner resilience?
Which one tips the scales for you?
Let us know your thoughts on that down in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective.
Until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and keep learning.